On. All right, we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Episode 14th week in a row of the Palantir Weekly Podcast. Happy to be here with everybody today on this Friday, May 20th. Had a bit of a rough day in the markets in general. So before we go into Palantir, I just want to go around and talk to everybody on how they're feeling. Chris, let's start off with you. How are you thinking about the markets currently?
I'm feeling good, man. I mean, yes, some of the portfolio hits are, painful to see, but right now is a time where you should probably ignore looking at your portfolio and just instead look at companies that you think are doing really well, who are going to perform and who are going to survive this downturn, and be ready with some capital on the side. I mean, that's what I've been doing. Just any new money that I have, I'm just saving up a little bit until I think some level of stabilization happens. I have not stopped DCAing into Palantir. That's like a forever thing that I'm going to do. That's not even a question. But I do have like some reservation on the tech sector in general. So right now I'm more invested in energy than I am in tech. Though tech is becoming a lot more like, what's the word? Like target rich, which means that I may actually start diverting some cash into tech pretty soon. But we'll see.
Jay, how are you? How has been your week in the market?
Oh man, I've been too busy. I've been too busy to actually even think about the market or anything like that.
That's good.
I think things look great, man. Things in a very bad way. But like if you really like these companies, right? Like you like Palantir, you like Tesla. Google is looking extremely attractive right now with like a 19 PE. You like these companies, and I don't. If you liked them a year ago when they were like, extremely expensive, like right now is a great opportunity. I think what sucks is, those of us that were buying Palantir at 25, I'm one of them, right? But the good thing is, like, I never had that experience of like that desire to like FOMO in, right? Where like I didn't want to drop all my money on Palantir. I was just buying like $1,000 a month every month. And then where I did FOMO in when it got to 16, I was like, hell no, it's not dropping below 16 anymore. So then I started dropping a lot of money into Palantir when it got to 16, and now it's at 8. So I think these prices are great for companies that are good companies that are stable. I consider Palantir one of them just because it's growing over 30%. It has zero debt. Yeah, you guys know the story. I think everybody always has it right. This is a company that's doing really well. So since it's one of my largest positions, I'm just not worried at all. My wife said, I tweeted this. She's like, if it gets to $5, you could place all of the savings in there. And I was like, bet. So now I'm just kind of like hoping that this thing drops to 5 so I can put my savings in it. One of the good things about, I know you were talking about like marriage, relationships, or whatever, right? Time for a girlfriend, whatever. One of the good things about marriage is your wife keeps you, conservative. I think if it wasn't for my wife, I would have dropped all of my life savings into Palantir when it was like 25. So she kept me from doing that. So I feel pretty comfortable.
Shout out to a couple of comments real quick. Theo is driving and listening to the Dream Team. Thank you so much. Sachin, good morning. Good morning to you, Sachin. Happy you're joining us. Drew bought at 27. I feel you, bro. David dropped his cross base from 26 to 15. Kind of in the same situation. I was at like 26. Now I'm at 19. And yeah, not too bad. All right, Dom, how's your week been?
Crazy. Yeah, I kind of am numb to the red now. So, but to your point, like when it got to 8, I was like, it's never dropping below 8. And then it hit 6. And I'm like, God. And it was only there for a little bit. But I'm trying to remind myself, you think it can't go lower. Don't mistake yourself at how irrational the market can be. Like Tesla's a good example for this week. Like I almost bought more at 800 and then 750. I was like, I think it can go lower. There's so many things that negative hate on Elon right now. We can talk about that. And then all of a sudden it went down to 6. And I think it can still go lower because there's a lot of people out there out for him. And so just learn to be patient. I think that's the biggest thing, building the cash pile up. And like you guys said, just trying to keep lowering the cost basis. Like, for instance, NVIDIA, they could crush earnings this week, right? Because AMD did. So, I listened to a call from their CFO earlier about 3 months ago, and she was like, we're not worried about the card issue in the stock. We bought ahead of time for supply chain, so we're good for 2022. But if there's any bit of one slip up in the report, even if they beat estimates, because they've beat and raised for the last 2.5 years, even if there's any blemish, I think the market will just slaughter it and take it from 160 to like 140, And so the probability of the market being irrational now on anything, on earnings, I'm paying attention to that more than being hopeful and saying this is the lowest it's going to go.
All they have to say is supply shortages, and that's enough. That's enough to make it crash. That's the one common thread right now that we're seeing with these companies. Anybody that's struggling with supply chains, they're getting sold off.
Does anyone here think that, so obviously technology valuations are down because of higher interest rates. Does anyone feel that for the past decade, the market has been in a euphoria, not around valuation, but around the concept of technology? So like 2008 housing market crash and Facebook FANG becomes a thing. And everyone in the world realizes, oh, the internet was crazy, but this new version, Web 2 of the internet, is even crazier. Do you think the general market and the general world is coming to a hypothesis that maybe technology isn't that insane, it's not that transformative, it's not that big of a deal, and we should start valuing these stocks like they're regular companies, not like they're, the next best thing since sliced bread? Or do we think tech is eventually going to have its rebound and this is just a correction because obviously technology is disruptive? What are some thoughts? Chris, we'll start with you.
Tech is always disruptive. The whole point of tech is to reduce down friction on anything that you're doing in the real world right now. So, if you're doing something that takes, labor, assets, effort, technology has a way of kind of like condensing all of that down and making it easier to do, right? So tech is always going to have bullishness behind it, right? The only problem is there are points where technology makes sense, and then there's other points where it doesn't. And a lot of times it usually comes with some sort of catalyst that propels technology to the next level. So an example is in 2000, it was the internet becoming a big thing. That's what propelled technology to the next stage, right? Then in 2008, 2009, 2010 was cloud computing. That started to become a big thing, right? So that's why you had all these applications and services and also the advent of the cell phone, which actually gave people like access to the technology. So I think what it is we have to wait until that next catalyst comes for technology that's going to propel us into like huge levels of growth. I think it's going to happen with regards with AI and like AI becoming more prevalent. Once AI really takes hold, a lot of people think that AI is really mature right now. It's not. It's not even like it's literally an embryo right now. But the minute that real AI comes to fruition, you're talking about so many business processes, so many like consumer applications that are going to end up becoming like just part of our natural day-to-day life, and you won't even notice it, and it'll just be a part of it. So all the technology companies that are kind of investing in AI right now, we had that giant bubble where a lot of companies, they would call themselves AI companies, or like this suit. It was literally like this weird situation where if you called yourself AI, or if you said AI enough times in your conference call, everyone would throw money at you, right? And a lot of companies realized it. Now, out of those companies, there's probably 10 to 20% that are real AI, that are actually working on the real thing. And I think those are the ones that we need to be looking at to invest in the future, right? And Palantir, I think, can be one of those companies that lends itself to an integrated AI platform, but it's going to take time and the market to stabilize, and then constantly see that growth. And eventually we'll see like a Palantir rebound and even grow beyond what it is today. But I do think that if anyone's thinking that Palantir is going to be $25 by next year, good luck.
That's a almost 300% gain, more 350% gain from here. Dom, your thoughts on tech and how you see the future of it?
Yeah, I think we got to be patient, like Chris was saying, that we go through life cycles of technology, and that height model that you look at, that curve, right? Of even when you look at stocks or technology, and I was just Googling like when the iPhone actually, the date it came out, January 9th, 2007. So 15 years ago, right? We can all remember like yesterday for most of us playing Snake on our Nokia. And it was a big deal to all of a sudden text and you're like, this is stupid. I'm not going to do the data charges. What? And you look at the evolution and what the phone has become and the amount of time that we all are glued to it and what it has accessed and created. I think that same level of transformation will happen with artificial intelligence, but it will take time to be where it becomes an everyday. And same thing with EVs, right? Like I was listening to Elon speak at that conference this week. He's the reason that we're actually having all these other companies do electric vehicles. They were so against it, and Tesla stealing so much market share pushed everything forward, right? So I think we're going to see a lot more transformation ahead. And why you're seeing it get punished right now is more around the fact that money costs too much right now, right? We're having to correct because of our way overspending for our country for the last 2 decades plus. And we have an administration that is continuing to want to spend money. So it's just impacting the issue even further. And so now rates are up. So now growth stocks always historically get hit when rates go up. So it'll cycle back. It may be a while, but it'll cycle back in about 24 months or so.
Jay, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with my boy Carp on this. You know, he says software is going to be the only moat, and I think that is correct. And when it comes to software, you know, everything that just Chris talked about, right? AI, edge AI, everything that Palantir is working on, they're working on the next iterations of technology, and that is going to be the only advantage. Like I messaged or tweeted like a few days ago saying that like Palantir is allowing the non-Teslas of the world to become Tesla, and by Tesla I mean the Googles, the Facebooks, all these folks that hire top tier engineers. Palantir is converting non-top tier engineers into top tier engineers with their software, and I think that's what he means by software is the only moat. So I do think that like technology it's being punished right now, but it's being punished for like the wrong reasons, right? Like people are like, oh, these are inflated, these are high valuations, but these companies are going to keep making money, man. These are winner take most. A lot of these companies are going to be winner take most companies, and that's what software is. That's what technology is, right? They're a winner takes most companies where they start eating up a lot of the revenues. Like look at Amazon. Look what Amazon did to all these retail stores. Look what Amazon did to Walmart, to Target. They really went in there and they were able to compete in a way where they took a lot of the market. You know.
But let's not jump the gun and say that majority. And I don't think you're saying this, but it won't be majority of software companies. There'll be a sub-select of really good companies that also fiscally are responsible. And so when they were borrowing money, like Palantir as an example, they could cover themselves if interest rates went up and they could pay that debt off. There's a lot of mid caps and small caps that have good visions, good tech, maybe great employees, but we're borrowing so much money. And that could actually make them targets for acquisition, mergers, or even going under because they never thought of, hey, well, what if money's not 0% interest?
Yeah. And that's what I mean by winner take most, right? Like there's going to be a few companies that are going to eat up the market. And like you said, whether it's like through acquisitions or just running other companies out of business.
Yeah. And the other thing is bankruptcies are, believe it or not, a good thing, because I know a lot of times, like, there's a lot of stigma towards bankruptcy, like, oh, you know, you tried to do this thing and then it failed and all this other stuff. But yeah, there's a lot of human capital that goes into developing something new that lets people innovate and iterate new things. So, and that's, I think, one of the key success the reasons for America's success over a long period of time is that we're not afraid to fail. I know that sounds really stupid, but trust me, if you think about it, all these other companies, they've have the stigma, especially in other countries, where if they go bankrupt, people are like, "Oh my God, you went bankrupt." Blah, blah, blah. In the U.S., we don't stigmatize bankruptcy as much. We say, "No, you know what? You tried. You gave it your all. Let's I mean, of course, there's a monetary sacrifice to it, but for the most part, we don't stigmatize it nearly as much. And it's that constant effort to make things better. I mean, think of all the e-retailers that died before we got that one Amazon, right? Think about all the AI companies that are probably going to die before everyone's like, yeah, Palantir is great, and all those companies that end up dying are probably going to get folded into Palantir somehow, whether it be through actual IP that maybe Palantir could end up acquiring or via talent from people that they eventually hire. I already see a lot of tech companies, they're shedding staff. Like if you look at Netflix, you look at Carvana, these are like software engineers that have developed code. They've been trained, and it takes a really long time to learn all this stuff, how to do all this background engineering. So if Palantir survives and it's able to hire someone from a Carvana or a Netflix that has that experience in building products, right? That'll be a big thing for Palantir. So right now, the companies that survive are going to literally get the pick of the litter in terms of technology, employees that are well versed in different technology platforms. So I do think there's one thing that we have to talk about, and that's the current tech sector. It's going through a contraction period. Like there's a lot of layoffs that are happening and I'm not talking about just big companies, but about even smaller VC firms. There's a ton of companies right now that are VC backed that are going under because what's happening is the VCs are saying, listen, I'm not going to put more money into your venture anymore. Like I don't have that kind of capital. The cost of borrowing is too high. So there's all sorts of VCs that are pulling money back. And that's gonna affect a lot of companies that are still in their growth stage and still are burning cash really badly. And I think this tech sell-off is going to be one that's going to be a little bit more prolonged than people are expecting. So I agree with you, Dom. I think a 24-month period would probably be a good estimate on how long we're going to see either a downward slope or a stabilization slope. So it's basically going to be like da 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 da, and then eventually after that, whatever is left over is probably going to end up, slowly going back up again.
Well, because think about it, what's going to change positively on what's causing all this, right? Like, let's think probably the quickest thing that could turn over and maybe make a pretty significant bounce would be if Ukraine and Russia, if that resolved quickly, that market would get all positive and and go in. But we still have other issues like inflation, supply chain, a lot of companies with bad balance sheets and now interest rates up. So like, I just don't see a lot being super positive for everyone to just get really excited and putting money back in for the next 24 months. So I'm trying to just temper my expectations of like gradually DCA. Like you said, it's a great time to just make sure your thesis is intact and really know your favorite companies and maybe even decide certain ones, just like Tesla and Palantir and others that I really like this more, and I can't find a flaw in this. This needs to have more of my money than something that's very speculative.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And we're going to see how the tech sector ultimately plays out. I was listening to a podcast today with VCs from Andreessen Horowitz, which is the biggest VC firm in the world. And they were talking about it. I mean, their argument was, look, the good companies, they just need to have enough cash to survive over the next 2.5 years and they'll make it out alive. But running out of cash is one of the biggest things. Fast is a VC-backed company that was doing like 10 million in revenue, but raised like $300-400 million. They went out of business a couple of weeks ago because they just couldn't live up to that valuation. So at some level, it's healthy for these companies to get back down to reasonable valuations. The problem is all us four idiots decided to buy them when they were at $25-30 a share.
But we're all young and we're learning lessons in investing, right? Like we want to make sure no one on this chat's thinking like we got it figured out, right?
Right.
Like, I think we're definitely like, I'm learning to just have more patience with dollar cost averaging and not. Now, I will say, let's throw this I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this idea. It's really made me start thinking about the idea of we know historically every 36 months or so, we start seeing these massive pullbacks at least once or twice, right? Like 10% in the market, maybe 20%. We've seen stuff go and take our what we've invested in and take it below what we had 3 years ago in certain positions. Does that mean that you might be better off, and I'm just throwing the question out there, you might be better off building that cash pile for those fear moments and then going all in, and you've already done all the research?
You mean time the market?
Yeah, I know.
No,
I'm trying not to say.
No, I disagree. Like you gotta. I think
I'm
keeping
just
your
throwing a
money.
question out there. I'm not saying I believe this. It just
Yeah, I think keeping your money invested, would give you like the better return. So like I'm still up on my Tesla position. When it got to like real highs, like $1,200, I decided to sell 1/3 of the position. Stupidly, I put all of it into Palantir, thinking that it wouldn't go lower than 13. But the point is, like, I stayed invested and I didn't sell all of my Tesla. I kept Tesla. And right now
you're okay though with that scenario. You're okay if you recognize something that it's really jumped up much higher to take a little bit off the table.
that's not timing the market. That's
No. I
yeah,
know that's not timing. I'm just
understanding
saying
that-
that's something I've thought about doing.
I see.
I should have did when I had Shopify at 1,700 because I knew instinctively I was like, whoa, this is way too high. But I was just like, I'm gonna hold this for the next 20 years. So what does it matter? But it does matter because if you take some of that off, you can then reinvest that, and it's almost like you're growing your capital by redistributing it.
Yeah, I think what's tricky with growth companies is like once you see them jump, you think they're going to continue growing the way that they're growing. So it's kind of hard to kind of like you said, right? Like you rather like, well, I'm going to be invested for 10 years. What does it matter? But when you know, from 1 month to the other, it like 3x like Tesla did, you know, I think that's a good sign of like, you know what, this will have to contract at some point. Like with Palantir, I bought in at Palantir at $20 when I initially invested into Palantir, and it jumped to 45. I could have sold, but I had that mentality of like, well, this is a 10-year investment. I'm not going to sell. So I didn't sell. I didn't buy, but I didn't sell. I just held.
Yeah.
And then like, yeah, like, you know, hindsight's 2020. I look back and I go like, I should have sold that 45. but
it's so hard though, bro, because 2021 everything was going up, and if you sold at 45 and it went to 60, that you would have been killing yourself because everything kept going up. Now apparently 45 became the top, but that's why it's just so hard, right?
Yeah, but something I always said on my channel is like I wouldn't buy over 30. So because I thought over 30 was just too much, and then I always said like between 20 and 30, I would just DCA into it. And then I wouldn't really go into it. I wouldn't go all in until it goes under 20, which is something that like a lot of people would tell me on my channel when I first started covering Palantir, because this was back in like November, December 2020, right? When I first started covering Palantir, a lot of people on my channel would be like, there's no way it's going to go under 20. You know, I did have a few guys that would tell me it's going to go to 5. I can't believe you're talking about Palantir right now. That thing's going to go to 5. Don't talk about it till it goes to 5. And I'm like, you're crazy. Never going to happen. So yeah, like
just to be clear, I've never sold any of my stocks. So I've been fully invested the whole time for the last 3 years. But it just made me think like, man, if I would have just paid a little more attention to when things get over dramatic, like, you know, when trying to think of some other good examples, when Twilio went to like 450.
Bruh.
But to Amit's point is like everything was flying high. So it was kind of like, you know, maybe it goes to 650.
Yeah. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I had a discussion with Christian today about this, and one of the things that Christian said that, you know, he focuses a lot more on like the company and the innovation of it rather than the macro environment. And I had to explain to him gently, like, no, there's a macro level thing too that you have to keep in mind when it comes to investing in anything, because even if your company is a high performer, and what we're seeing right now is kind of sad because there are companies that are beating expectations that are crazy, like crazy beats, right? Yet they're taking huge hits because the macro level and the macro environments just changed and is against you. But this is, I think, where I would say I'm a little bit critical of someone like Alex Karp. And I know Jay's like, what is he going to say?
Let's do this.
All right. No,
Let's
no.
start the debate. All right. In one corner, we have Chris Patel from Atlanta, Georgia, who thinks that Karp should be replaced on the record. He's on the record with that.
Wow.
And then on the other side, we have Jay from Cali, where I believe, talking about his love for Alex Karp. Chris, floor is yours.
LA.
First of all, I wouldn't necessarily say, oh, we need to replace Alex Karp right away. I would say that the way that he's operating right now does not lend enough confidence in me to say that he's the right person for the job. There is an alternative that I actually looked up and did a lot of research and found out, and I think you guys might agree with it, but I'll keep that in just a second. One of the things that I've been noticing is that a lot of companies that are unfairly taking a hit right now, that are literally at their lows. Do you know one thing that's happening that's not happening at Palantir? Insiders are buying stock. Uber CEO bought stock. Today, SoFi, Anthony Noto bought stock. Guess what? If you're telling investors on a conference call, we could be 20 times higher. Okay. Guess what? That was at 15. Now you're at 7. That means that you could be 40 times higher, right? Based on what you're saying. I'm not saying buy back stock as in the company uses its balance sheet to buy back stock. I'm talking about a CEO using personal funds to buy back some of the stock. Right now, Alex Karp has sold over $1 billion of Palantir. There's a ton of cash sitting in his bank account right now, and he's got literally living like a hermit in New Hampshire. You're telling me right now that he can't throw a couple, like $20-30 million into the stock and say, look, I'm with you guys. You know what? I'm not only going to support my investors in this, but also my employees, because right now, all these employees that they have, they've been hurt by Palantir's share drop also, right? So on one hand, Alex Karp is going out there and saying, we could be much higher. We're serving a purpose, but I'm not willing to commit my own money into this. I'm all about selling. So it's not enough now, in my opinion, to not sell the equity grants that you're getting, because that's what people are saying. Oh, well, look, Alex Karp's not selling anymore. Big deal. Why aren't you buying?
Dude, he's put 20
good
years.
Point.
He's
put
20 years of his life into this company. Like 20 years of his dedication, sweat.
But Jay, that does not matter, because if you think it could be 20 times bigger and now it's 40, like what it means, it's on sale at a massive. Years you spent building it doesn't make sense if you think it can be 40 times bigger. That's a 40x return on your money.
But we're not talking about a balance sheet thing here. We're talking about the CEO buying shares. Why? That doesn't matter.
No, but I think that's Chris's point. Karp has $1 billion in the bank, just like Anthony Noto has a decent amount of money, not $1 billion. And Anthony Noto has been buying SoFi every other week because he thinks SoFi should be like a probably $20, $35 stock. If Karp thinks that it should be 40 times bigger as per the numerical projections, I mean, I'm with Chris on this. He should be just put $5 million in it to show us you're with us, Yeah,
and also think about it. The one thing that, look at Tesla. What's his Elon was like, yeah, give me $1 salary, but give me a like a $20 billion return if I get the stock to a point where it's like crazy high and all my investors make money. Is Palantir setting price targets for itself, saying, listen, if we don't hit $50 billion by 2025, we're not going to get paid? No, they're just still getting paid every year. They're getting RSUs without anything. Yeah, sure, some of it's in options, right? But guess what? They don't have like a win or lose situation. So imagine right now the motivation to tell your employees to say, hey, we can be a lot bigger, but I have no personal stake in the game other than the stuff that I have, which I'm still constantly selling, right? And the other thing is the entire board is selling. There's not a single person on Palantir's executive board.
I want to back your point and your position here. So I just pulled up in Simply Wall Street last quarter, top 25 shareholders. Did they have any change in their position? Number one institution number one holding period of the company is Vanguard at 7.6 ownership now. They've climbed past Teal. So they changed their position by 22% last quarter. Peter Thiel added to his position with 5.24. So he's the second with 1.2 billion in. So he added last quarter. BlackRock added
No, Dom. I'm not so with regards to what is that thing called? With BlackRock and the other funds, they're just investing in general, right? I don't think that they're literally like pooling money into just one confident thing. They're buying all over the place.
No, I get it. But my point is that everyone on the top 10 bought more except Alex Karp.
Well, no, but did Peter Thiel buy any more stock?
Yeah, 5%.
No, you're looking at a percent. I'm saying, did he actually file any insider filings where it's not that he got grants, equity grants through options or whatever? I'm saying, did he buy stock in the open market?
He's talking about like Noto. Noto's
right.
Filing Form Cs or whatever they're called.
Right. These people, the other CEOs, went out into the market and just bought stock. They said, look, I have $5 million in the bank. Give me that $5 million. Let's buy some stock.
CEO did that as well.
Toby did too.
Shopify and Spotify CEO. CEO.
Elon did it. Elon did it too when Tesla was much lower. Because so that's the thing. All these people have built a large personal wealth pool. And the other thing with Alex Karp is you're a professed socialist, right? Guess what? If you're a professed socialist, one of the things you want is the benefit of all the people that own Palantir, majority which are probably employees right now. One of the biggest problems that I'm seeing with Palantir is that all these employees, they're demoralized. Imagine right now, you've been busting your hump for the last 2 years, right? And literally all the stock grants that you have been like, we're right now, at least we have jobs where we got paid. You're talking about someone who was promised 300,000, but barely came away with like 30, 40,000 of additional money because guess what? The stock price went to crap. So all the time, Palantir, Alex Karp comes out and says, hey, guess what? We could be much higher. Put your money where your mouth is. Stand with the employees, stand with the investors, stand with the retail folk, and use some of those hundreds of millions of dollars that you have laying around that literally you're not using because you're a socialist. You're not spending money on crazy luxury items or an ex-wife that took half your shit like Jeff Bezos, right? Reinvest.
I mean, is there any disagreement, Jay, that it would be nice to see? And by the way, I got destroyed by Alex last week defending Karp, and I agree with Chris. Karp should be buying.
I don't think it matters. It's what I would say. I just don't see how that makes a difference besides like that moral boost, I guess, to the employees and investors. But I mean, that's not going to solve the macro issue. That's not going to solve the stock-based compensation issue that people are seeing. That's not going to solve the company getting more government contracts or anything like that. It's just going to be a moral boost. Like, does he need to buy in order for the stock to go up? No, it won't do anything to the stock. So it doesn't really matter whether he ends up buying or he doesn't end up buying. And does he need to buy? The answer to that is no, he doesn't. Can he? Sure, he can. Does it make a difference? No. How many millions of shares does he still hold?
But it's not about moving the stock, but no one's going to move the stock price. It's just about
but how many millions of shares? Like, I think the bigger argument would be if he were to sell everything or sell like the majority of his position. I think that's the issue. But if he buys $5 million worth of shares, what is that to the millions of shares that he already holds? It's nothing, to be honest.
It's a morale boost. And the thing is, sure, when you're talking about morale is very important in a corporate structure. When you're thinking about employees, right? Employees are always looking to leaders to lead, right? Right now, one of the things that I'm not seeing in Palantir is the leadership taking the actions in the background necessary to make that argument to say, yeah, the leaders are with me on this. In the military, we have this thing right now. It's called servant leadership. And the way that it works is that even like, let's say you're about to have like food, right? You're about to eat. The leaders eat last. Like when you're like literally lower ranking people are at the bottom right now, imagine trying to work for Palantir and knowing that the CEO of your company is selling shares, right? And like I said, versus joining a company where you know the CEO is buying shares, personally buying shares. Which company are you going to want to work for? Are you going to want to work for the guy that says, oh, we can be a lot higher, but isn't putting his own money towards it? Or the company that is actually the guy that's saying we could be much higher, and I'm personally getting more invested in it.
Let me jump in for a second, because this is kind of like the argument that I was having, or not argument, but you know, the back and forth that I was having with Alex from ticker symbol U. I think there's a disconnect between investors and the company and the employee and all of that. And that disconnect is what we see as value. We're attributing it to the stock price. We're attributing it to whether the CEO buys or sells. We're attributing it to stock-based compensation and all that. But I think Palantir has a much more important role that it's playing outside of what us as investors focus on. And when you're talking about like servant leadership, when you're talking about what keeps the company motivated and their morale, well, I think, you know, working with the the World Food Program or whatever it's called, the WFP, I believe that's what it's called. I think getting food, beds to people in Ukraine. I think actually saving lives in people in Ukraine. I think distributing, during the pandemic, doing all these things, these really important things that a software company gets to do instead of just create a like button or create a subscribe button or whatever, like doing actual real important things. I think that's the morale boost. Now, and then like when you want to talk about Palantir, we're like, what is their vision? What is their mission? Their vision is to become the most important software company in the world. So if they stay focused on that mission, becoming the most important software company in the world, they're going to stay focused on solving the most important problems in the world, whether it's in the military, in space, air flights, whatever it is, right? And by them focusing on that, they're going to create the most valuable product in the world. By them focusing on the most important product, software problems in the world, creating the most important products in the world, will eventually create the most value for this company that becomes the most valuable company. So that's the mission. We shouldn't get distracted because share price is down today because other CEOs are buying. And what Alex Karp is really focused on is we have to become the most important software company in the world, in the most important context. So in the military, in the Navy, in governments all around the world, in NATO, becoming an operating system for NATO, becoming an operating system for the entire United States.
How does that have anything to do with Karp buying more shares?
I'm sorry?
He's just saying that that's more important.
Everything you're saying doesn't answer why Karp's not just chipping in a couple million more for morale's sake.
So how I started this, Amit, was there's a disconnect between what we see as what a morale boost would be for the employees, right?
What do you mean?
Versus what
he's saying? He's saying if he invested a couple million, it's not really a big morale boost compared to other things that he could do.
To actually solving the problems. Like imagine the things that.
Why can't he do both? They're not going to be the operating system for NATO tomorrow.
My point is because he doesn't have to do both. If the stock was up today, we wouldn't be having this conversation. If other CEOs were buying, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
If the stock went up, no one would say shit about the shareholder letter as well. I agree with you. My point is just it would look nice. I think that was Alex's point from Ticker Symbol.
Yeah, but it would look nice. Does Alex come across to you as somebody that cares whether that looks nice or not?
Optics. Yeah, he doesn't care about optics.
And that's the kind of CEO that I want leading this company. One that doesn't care about the optics because they're solving some real.
But Jay, the other side to that is in business, the optics matter.
Yes, they do.
In business and in stock and in everything and how what is being portrayed in the media and everything else. You don't think that CNBC and other people be like, oh, look, Palantir's representing. He put in a couple $1 million. You sure as heck took Alex Karp to the woodshed when he did $1 billion worth of sales. So if he goes in and puts 10 million like Toby or someone else, which is chump change to him, that at least is good press. And it also, I can tell you, working at a big corporation, anytime you see your CEO buying stock, it does give you a sense of, okay, it just psychologically, you're like, yeah, he believes that he's trying to make some more money, you know? So I'm not saying that that's like going to change the stock price and fix bigger problems. What I would like to see is more transparency in these analyst calls and these earnings letters of tell me how we're going to get there on Foundry. Give me some use cases where you quantifiably can tell me the ROI on Foundry for crypto or this or that. Because once you do that and you unlock the quantifiable ROI, you're going to have customers lining up saying, oh, dang, he just saved them millions of dollars. And this is how they did it. Now you don't even have to talk to Palantir. They'll just, here's my customer reference. We do this for anybody in crypto. And I haven't seen that yet. And I don't know why. That's kind of been confusing because they've talked about the different Foundry modules, but we haven't seen some of those more traditional use case ROI case studies put out there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like the quantifiable piece of it?
Yeah. And
like it's marketing. Like they have some really cool videos about being on submarines and the ontology and all this other stuff. Sampo helping with insurance. Like that was one piece when they did the insurance piece. I was getting really excited, like how they were delivering better health insurance and data. And I'm like, well, what's the quantifiable ROI? What can we take to that? And then you can replicate that to anybody in the States in health insurance. So that's just been the only, I don't know. It's been weird because you see that with pretty much most big software companies.
Yeah.
Now there is one person, if let's say tomorrow morning, Alex Karp said, you know what, I'm done being the CEO of Palantir. Like, you know what, I did everything I had to. I got it to the point where I had to. I need to retire. You know, my hair's gone gray from all the stress I've had. Who would be the best person to replace Alex Karp? And believe it or not, after listening to the interview with Jedberg, you know, the Jedberg podcast, I honestly think it would be someone like Doug Philippone, you know, MIT grad, background military, knows how to do leadership, knows how to build business. The space itself for Palantir in the government side is so big and so large that you need someone who's got that level of expertise, that credential. Anytime, even when you listen to Doug, I really recommend people listen to that entire podcast. And the one thing that I really liked him saying is that he breaks things down so easily and digestible so that everyone can understand it. So an example is, like, he was like, yeah, we were trying to get a nail in, and someone was like, yeah, let's get a 400-pound sledgehammer to get a nail in versus just going to Home Depot and buying a hammer, right? The analogy was that Palantir was trying to build this huge, thick product and trying to give it to people who needed to just, you know, do a small thing. So we need to make sure we modularize things. And I think his input into Gotham was probably what actually made Gotham very successful. And some of the other earlier versions of Palantir on the commercial side that didn't work out were probably because of, you know, not having a leader essentially be able to like craft that. So I think right now, what's been more successful on Palantir, it's been Gotham, right? We see Gotham has been growing for the most part. A lot of companies, Palantir's kind of like gone into that direction. So if I were to say a good candidate for CEO, I think it would be Doug Philippone.
I'm not saying we need to change CEOs. I'm just saying.
I'm not saying we need to either. I'm just saying that in case anyone was wondering, because I did present that question last time, and I was stumped because I didn't know who to answer. Like some people said, what about Sham? And I'm like, nah, Sham's an operator, but he can't craft the vision like some of the other people. I'm sorry, I don't see Sham as the CEO. You know, I don't know about you guys, how you feel about it, but I don't see him as a CEO.
Real quick, let me read these super chats. Buy Jay a coffee. Karp is a socialist. Likely doesn't care about money since he's a socialist. It's probably well, it's an interesting idea, Drew. And interesting to think about how he thinks of money given his socialist philosophy.
Everyone's a socialist until it's your own pocket, bro.
That's also true. Brian Borkowski says, "Thank you for the super chat. CNBC just had a segment on Palantir Insider selling 300 million shares at its peak and no insider buying at its lower current price." And to be honest, when it was at 25, 30, 40 back in 2021, they DPO'd at 10. They all made 300% selling at those highs. So it's like, if I was an insider, I would have sold too. I mean, like, you didn't expect it to do that well. So now I think what we're asking is like, if they could buy a little bit, it would make us a little happy. But I agree with Jay. Ultimately, they're trying to become the most important software company. So that's what we're doing. Can we talk about Gotham Europa? What are you guys' thoughts on this product? Dom, let's start with you.
Yeah. Did you guys see Code Strap's video on it? He had several. I think he talked to Christian about it. Really made some interesting comments that I was, when I saw the demo, I had similar thoughts, but he put it all together and he's like, this is something they can package and sell to NATO. They can hit a whole bunch of Western allies and say, look, we can securely communicate with each other. We can securely give you insights into when you're having conflict with, counterparts. and we're not violating any kind of treaties or anything like that. Like everything can be self-contained, and you're getting the analyst chat back and forth to be more effective in times of war. I just think it was really interesting. And then leveraging satellites, we know that there's going to be a lot of value with satellite data in a lot of different ways. And here's something now that's packaged, ready to go. And it seems like it's more modularized, right? Like they don't have to buy all of Gotham. Maybe this is just did you guys take it as as kind of a use case module that people could buy?
No, I mean, I thought of it as Slack for the government space.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what it is. The Slack for the intelligence community, because the intelligence community has to literally one of the biggest problems with governments talking to each other is how to do it securely in a way that's not going to get hacked, how to present data to each other without getting it hacked. And a lot of that stuff is still done via old school things like secure email for the most part, and like really like other things. So imagine instead you're able to effectively communicate right away. The one thing I did want to stress and I really liked, they actually had some satellite images over Mariupol. So if there was any doubt in people's mind if Palantir was operating in Ukraine, bruh, this gone. Like literally they were showing you stuff that they were doing in Ukraine the entire time. So I think this, believe it or not, this conflict is going to be it's weird because a lot of times defense contractors, they try to sell you something and say, look, we have the next biggest, this greatest thing. But if you have no enemies to use it against, it's kind of pointless, right? It's just like, okay, it's going to sit around.
That's why they have to fear monger to like get you to be afraid to buy it.
Yeah. And now, guess what? Because of this conflict, Palantir says, hey, here's a real world use case. Enjoy. Go ahead. Oh, you want to see what's going on over Kyiv right now? Blah, blah, blah. Meta constellation, look at it. Oh, you want to do how many tanks are in this region? Blah, blah, blah. Here it is. So now it's a much, much easier sell. Dude, if the government revenue does not accelerate like crazy over the next 2-3 years, I'm done with Palantir. Because at this point, from what I've seen, every government should be like, here's $1 billion. Get me this right away.
It will, man. The Q3, they're going to kill it, dude.
Dude, I hope so.
They will. That goes back to like what I was saying, Dom. They're creating like this just like entire operating system for the government. Not circling back to Alex Karp here, but you really do need somebody making sure that this company is focused on these problems. It's so easy to go for like the low hanging fruit. And that is what Palantir is not. They're not trying to go for the low hanging fruit. They're sticking with the most complex problem. And then from there, they're going to modularize everything else. This has always been the thesis for me. Like if these guys could solve the hardest problems, getting downstream is the easy part, but everybody else gets stuck on the low hanging fruit, and then until those companies eventually die, But
I think another big piece though to what allows that is that if you saw the video on their website or on their YouTube channel about how they have these small teams for these projects, and so they're very fast and flexible to where like in their video they were saying, yeah, I helped do this and this for this war and this submarine. Like these are teams, like engineers normally don't get to own projects like that all the way in a small group team at Microsoft or Google. So I think that culture that he's fostered, if they keep doing that, it is going to allow them to move much faster than the competition because there's a lot less bickering. It's just straight to working within your team and owning the responsibility.
Yeah, their innovation speed is crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I will disagree with you on one point, Jay, in that low-hanging fruit. In software, low-hanging fruit is where the money is. All right?
Right.
Because essentially, if one company has a problem, everyone has a problem. That's low-hanging fruit, right? That's what it is. It's easily identifiable thing. So if you can create a solution that you can map out to a whole bunch of people in a very short period of time using technology like software, which is what software can do, that provides you tons of return ROI, as opposed to working on one big project that has one big goal that can't necessarily be transferred to other areas because it's such a big problem for one industry. So The example that I would give is fast food. Let's say you have a fast food chain that has, trying to get more throughput. Well, if you help them with that fast throughput, get more customers in the door, you can sell to every other fast food company that has that low-hanging fruit problem, right? So I think one of the things that there's a saying, the riches are in the niches. And so one of the things that Palantir has done in the past is ignore the niches. And now they're starting to go into the niches and say, look, we're fine. We can modularize and actually tailor to your small niche and sell you a product at a much lower cost. And even from the business end, that whole change that they have, where they're actually now allowing flexible usage-based revenue, that's going to also be a big driver for them. Before they were like, no, you have to sign a $10 million contract, whether you use it or not. Now they're like, no, you only pay for what you use. That's huge for companies. If you're telling me right now, Amazon says, look, we'll help you do cloud computing, but it's going to cost you 10 million versus a usage model, Amazon would have been dead long ago. Where Amazon figured out, no, you know what? We'll just go based on usage model. Even the smallest people can pay us a little bit of money, use it. And as their business grows, they can use more compute, they can use more resources. And like I said, I think from a business endpoint, that's a big change for Palantir. I'd like to hear about from Dom about this because he's in software sales. So what do you think about that?
I love, you guys heard me on the last week episode when we said what was one slide that jumped out at you was the usage-based pricing, because I was like, now they're putting it together. The whole fundamental piece of SaaS is about reducing time to value is the output your customer needs to get. But in order to do that, you need to also make sure that deployment and consumption is as fast as possible, so that way that value can be realized. So they're now doing usage-based pricing, which gets more people into buying and gets it easier to access. But let's take it a step further, and I've heard all three of you say this at some point. Why don't we have just a freemium model? Give me something that gets a device. And they kind of are starting to get that, I think, the hints with CodeStrap and stuff. Like if you saw CodeStrap's video today, I just took notes on it. I watched it. It was a developer advocate job rec for London. So basically they put a job posting out there to do what CodeStrap does, but in London. So if any of you guys want to move to London, represent. But yeah, CodeStrap was just saying, hey, we need to build this out. You're going to get your hands on the technology like I am. And freemium, man, if they could put this thing, I just wonder what's the reason why not putting a freemium out. Like when you get your hands on this stuff, I think Alex even told you he might be getting his hands on this stuff, right, Jay?
No, he did not. He said he can't.
Oh, cannot confirm or deny. Yeah.
That means he's getting it.
Yeah.
So most likely, yeah.
But that's what I feel about Chris. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if the game plan is, build network effects within large commercials and within government, and then move downstream, I think, and then have last mover advantage in the low hanging fruit, I think that would be the big play. Because the low hanging fruit gets replaced by one technology company, then another. But we don't have any of these technology companies that are tackling the low hanging fruit build a monopoly within large commercial businesses. So I think building that network effects within large commercial businesses and then going after the low hanging fruit is actually the right move. Having that last mover's advantage is the right move. So I know we're kind of frustrated and we want to see that happen right away, but it's happening eventually. The question is, do we think that Palantir has a moat? Do we think that their technology is superior than anything else that's out there that's competitive to Palantir? If that is the question, now Palantir's just kind of got to get themselves out of their way, out of their own way, and allow the salespeople then to take these modular products and be like, okay, all that philosophy stuff, all that technologically savvy stuff, let's ignore it for a minute. Here's how this is going to work for you, and this is how it's going to solve your problem. I think that's one thing that Palantir is going to have to learn, and I think it's something that they're actually addressing. How many like conversations have Alex Karp had where he mentions that they've messed up in the past, that they've been adversary towards IT,
hey,
that they've been adversary towards sales.
Strap in this. He just joined back with us. If he can jump in, I'd love to pick his brain with this too, because
He'll be here next week for sure. So
I feel like every time we talk to him, I learn so much. It's like an aha moment.
Yeah, we gotta wrap up soon, but he'll definitely be here next week, and we'll talk more about it.
We've been talking for almost an hour. I feel like it's been so easy to talk to you guys about this. Like I could talk Palantir stocks all day long.
Coach Travis drunk also.
I'd say, Jay, I would contest you and say I think a top-down approach works, but it's not that great. I think a bottom-up approach is a much easier way to become much bigger. Right now, Palantir is still trying to do more of that bigger product, but I think the sales folk that they did hire literally just went to leadership and said, look, guys, I can't sell the stick product. It's not going to work. Yeah. We need modularity, right? And that's where I think right now they're flipping the script a little bit. And now that they're trying to hit a lot more niches using modular products, because the salespeople, the question that I always have, and I don't understand why didn't they have salespeople 10 years ago that were dedicated to software sales?
Because they weren't selling to commercial 10 years ago.
Yes, they were.
No, they
yes,
weren't.
They were. Yes, they were. Dude, they had contracts with JP Morgan, Home Depot, all these big companies that they lost. Believe it or not.
Their focus wasn't commercial. That was probably like spin-offs of Gotham.
No,
they trying it out in commercial, but it's not like they were dedicated to selling to commercial business. They were trying out their software on the commercial business. Yeah, Coca-Cola, Home Depot. Yeah. But this wasn't like Palantir dedicating themselves to the commercial business. This didn't really start till 2016. So if your argument is as of 2016, why didn't they really go after? I would agree with you there. But they're selling to the government business, and that's just a whole different ballgame, dude. Like just what they did alone within the government business, it can't be like that's got to be really appreciated, because this is a software company from Silicon Valley that was able to penetrate the government and sell their product and become an operating system for the government. Like, this is insane. They're not selling missiles and rockets here. They're selling software.
And Jay, I'm totally with you. I agree that is a part of their business. But
my point is that's why there's no sales team though, right? Because leadership has to be able to sell this. That's kind of like my point here. Leadership has to be able to sell it to the government business. And then you go into the commercial business. Now I'm 100% with you. Now it's time to go after the commercial business and get the tech folks out of the way, and have the sales team lead this attacking the commercial business, right? But yes, I think and Coach Trap has brought this out quite often actually, which is like they should have started this like since Foundry was created, and I 100% agree with that. 100% agree with it. However, I think the concern is the mission going to be at risk if we heavily rely on sales? And I think that's always been the concern with Palantir. If we start relying on sales, do we then not start developing and top tier products as because that's what they want to be known for, right?
No, that's true. But what I'm trying to say is now they're finally pivoting. What I'm trying to just say is that when you said, oh, they're trying to still do the top-down approach, I think that's an old model. And I think they've literally moved away from that. Now I think they're trying to hit as many people as possible. That's why they partnered with IBM. That's why they partnered with Accenture.
Are they? So,
I think so.
I want to throw an idea out there. I'd love to hear all three of your thoughts. Can they support the maximum amount of growth that this product technically could actually reach? Or are they needing to your point, need to leverage AWS, IBM, Deloitte, and all these other people? Because when you start getting more and more customers, one of the things in SaaS, it's all about that retention and that experience. And you may not have all the brightest customers that go out and buy your product. So is it that, to Jay's point, they're really focused on these big accounts they have and expanding into all the different departments and getting those bigger contracts? And then, when they've added their support force, that they can handle the growth. Is that, I'm just curious what your thoughts are on supporting the massive growth, right?
The careers page right now seems to be full of support roles. That's what I've been seeing, right? So they're pivoting away a lot more from software development to support for applications that they have, right? And also just getting heavy hitters like, IBM and Accenture and everything else just goes to show that they are trying to hit a broader swath of companies, right? Otherwise, they would have said, you know what, we're just going to keep hiring internal salespeople and just have them do all the sales. No, they're actually sacrificing margin. And I think that's one of the things that we're starting to see, right? That margin compression. But that's on top of, look at their customer growth in commercial. That was huge. Look at the total number of companies that were added in the last quarter. And that's with these partnerships that were only started less than 6 months ago. I think 2 years from now, 3 years from now, I think the total customer count is going to be huge. Now, I think the margin is definitely going to go down, but if the revenues go much, much higher and if they grow faster, it way outweighs the margin loss that you have from having third-party vendors do the selling for you and even support the product. Because remember, these companies are not just selling your product and saying, hey, listen, here's Palantir Foundry. All of a sudden now you have to call Palantir if you need any changes. No, they're also going to be helping support the product. Right?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. If you have the certification program, now all of a sudden you copy Cisco's model, and boy, you can get scaled then, because then everyone will be like, well, I'm a Palantir certified engineer. You can't get rid of me because your business runs on this.
There are so many job openings in India for Palantir with Palantir Foundry right now. So just for 2 seconds, take a step back. What does India do really well? Well, we're all about support services, baby. We are the back office of the world. So all I'm saying is Palantir is hitting that inflection point now where they can actually outsource some of that support services. Like right now when I call, let's say I have an issue with Microsoft Office. Do you think when I call Microsoft, it's someone in Redwood picking up the phone? No, it's gonna be my cousin in India. Like, hello, can you help? I should not make that. I feel like self-derogatory when I do. I should have done that. But it would probably be one of my cousins picking up the phone, and saying, "What can I do? What can I do for you?" I'm just gonna go with it. Screw it. I've already done it. So
I 100% agree with Coach Trent, man. Like we underestimate the government business, I think, a lot of times with Palantir, and I think it's Q3, all of 2024 and 2025. Even though the commercial business is going to continue to grow, the government business is what's going to be driving the business for Palantir. So I think Q3, that's what it is. Q3 is the quarter where we're going to like, whoa, about decelerating revenues. And that's when Kathy Wood's going to come running back and say, take my money, Palantir. And Chris is going to be like, man, Alex Karp is the best CEO ever.
Nah, bro, no.
Chris is going to be eating those words.
Results are what make a good CEO. All right.
Karp is going to personally visit you, bro. Karp's going to be like, so what were you saying on that podcast?
No, dude,
you didn't like my German philosophy?
Do you see Palantir as not having results? I'm just kind of confused about that. Or like, what results are they missing in your book?
So I think the technology is great. I think they've done a great job with the product, but now it's time to sell it, right? There are a lot of, and I was explaining to someone the other day, I said the Concorde was amazing. When Concorde first came out, everyone was like, oh my God, we're going to be able to go from, from Europe to the US in half the time. It's a much smoother experience because it flies way up in the stratosphere. What happened? Did the Concorde become the next mode of transportation for the world? No. So that's the thing. Just because you have this great technology doesn't mean that it's going to be commercially viable. The technology that Palantir has right now, it's great. But if the wrong leaders are in charge and they don't do the right job, they may not be able to successfully commercialize it to the point where it's big enough to the point where we see the benefit of it. If you think that there aren't other CEOs right now looking at Palantir's technology and saying, yeah, I'm going to develop something similar at a easier price point that I can sell faster, dude, you're totally wrong. Palantir may be 5 years ahead today, but if there are other CEOs out there, especially good CEOs, they're like, nah, I'm going to develop something similar and catch up to Palantir and use my business acumen to get way ahead of them.
How long has Snowflake been in business?
I have to see. I think from 2012, I think,
Yeah,
but
2012.
yeah.
About 9 years. And how long has Palantir's commercial business been in business? Official commercial business. We're not counting Home Depot here.
That's two different. That's two different things.
No. That's
Yeah.
so not. I see your point, Jay. I would so agree with you. You're looking at a business that's been around since 2012, and then Foundry really didn't get off till 2016, and it's like a new company, and they're still in the early innings. Like, let's
Yeah, but Palantir, Foundry, and Snowflake aren't exactly like competing for the same.
My point is they're 6 years in, right? Versus something like Snowflake that's 10 years in. 6 years in, they're growing their commercial business 100%, quarter over quarter, year over year. They've done this for the last 2 years. They expect to continue doing this, and they're investing so that they can continue doing this through the sales team. I'm seeing results. I don't know. I'm very confused. All that's driving like the negativity towards Palantir right now. It's the stock price. That's what it is. They're executing. I don't see where they're not executing properly. The only thing I would say is I would agree to Dom's point, which he's been bringing up throughout this conversation, which is the lack of transparency. And I think that's a little bit difficult because as investors, we're like, okay, how do we comp this thing? How do we make sense of this, right? Where's it going to be 5 years from now? So that's difficult. But year over year, quarter over quarter, over the last two quarters, since they've been trading publicly, they've been doing fine.
I think that's the quote that's got to end the night. That's the quote.
That's right there. That's the mic.
Good luck with monetizing this video of it.
Yeah, right.
I love when Coach Rap gets drunk because I think when the earnings came out, I think Coach Rap commented on someone's video. I saw his comments where he was a little bit annoyed. He was like, it was on the live stream we did with Tom. He was like, if they don't execute, they're gonna get their lunch eaten or something, right? He was being kind of negative because all of us were kind of annoyed at how our earnings went. And when he gets drunk, he's like, Snowflake is effing dog shit.
Snowflake is just a column or database.
Did you guys see Coach Trap's video he made just the other day about the skies falling and he put music to it and he was showing all the stock prices crumbling?
I could tell which videos Coach Trap is drunk in.
Dude, we need to do a bag holder convention, bro, and just go ham in Vegas. Screw all, whether Palantir goes to the moon or not. I think we just need to hang out in Vegas for a weekend.
We all should do that, bro. We all should plan a trip. I don't know when. I mean, the summer is probably the best time, but if we all just fly out to Vegas, and Jay, you're close. Me and Chris can meet up in New York. Dom, I know you got kids.
I'm the far man away.
But
Coach Trap will be there with the bourbon, bro.
Oh, that's true. He knows how to get me. Yep. Bring the bourbon.
He said Snowflake is down 61%. That is also true.
Bro, Palantir is down like 85%.
All right, that's our show. Thank you guys for joining us on the live stream. We'll be back next week. Jay, feel free to come back next week. I know Dom definitely will be, and Coach Rap will be here next week. So all five of us could do it.
Man, I love all you guys' channels. You guys, we all talk about this because we really do love this technology.
No, we really are down hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's why.
Hey, we're not.
Alex Carp, buy some stocks so my wife will get off my back. Alex Carp, buy some stocks so my wife will get off my back. That's what I need right now.
Now so I get what's going on with you, Chris.
At least I could go back to her and be like, hey, honey, did you know that the CEO of Palantir bought some stock?
Bro,
you know, right now she's like, what?
I would have left you alone.
Yeah, you would have left him alone.
Come on, Jay. Don't you need that excuse right now? Like, honey, what's going on with Palantir? Well, honey, I can't tell you why it's down, but I can tell you the CEO is buying some Palantir stock. Yep. I think it's gonna see.
Wait, Chris,
all of our wives will be thankful.
Your wife is she's on you about the price. She knows.
No, not at all.
No.
I'm just kidding about it. But it would be nice to use that as opposed to like dodging the question overall. Like right now, I just pretend like I didn't hear it. You know, like it's the market. It's the market. You know, but eventually, I'd like to say, hey, honey, guess what? The CEO of Palantir bought some stock, you know, so this way, even I don't look like a complete tool in front of her, you know. Thanks, Alex Carp.
I take everything back, dude. Now I completely understand you. So,
Yeah.
see,
Yeah.
with my wife, it's like,
Chris
yeah,
is showing us what's
Palantir's
behind the
down.
curtains here.
With my wife, it's like Palantir's down, but look at my Tesla, honey. And she's like, okay, you're not that dumb, you know? So,
Yeah.
but if Tesla gets under 500, now I'm in trouble. So
Basically, Alex Karp saved my marriage. Buy some Palantir stock.
And that's it for us tonight. We'll see you guys next week.
All right, my fellow bag
Bye.
holders.